Carroll County's in our spotlight tonight. Then we
Great.
have then we have Sarah from Ducks Unlimited with us tonight, and then it's going to be followed by our representatives and other people that were at the National Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting. So we got a full slate tonight, so we'll get started. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Sure. Welcome. It's nice to see everyone. We're thrilled to have Matt Coughlin here. He's the Carroll County Conservation District Manager since May. He's focused his efforts on rejuvenating the district with a new website, social media pages, and exploring new programs. Matt has a specialty in outdoor recreation, trail design, and construction. He has earned his bachelor's degree in recreation resource management from Lyndon State College, and his master's in environmental conservation is from UNH. He got his start in conservation work as an AmeriCorps intern in the Kingdom Trails in Vermont 16 years ago. And he's worked for various organizations, including the Student Conservation Association, Maine Appalachian Trail Club, the Nature Conservancy, and the Forest Service. So with that, we want to welcome you. Thanks for your time being here with us now, Matt. And with that, what can you tell us about some of these new programs and things going on in Carroll County Conservation District? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dick. So Matt Coughlin, Carroll County District Manager, and just want to put a plug in, visit our new website and like us on the social media, Facebook and Instagram. Trying to build up the following there, and that's where we're primarily announcing new opportunities. So today I'm going to primarily focus on our wood stream addition work, but just to recap some of the new things that are happening, the biggest thing is currently we're recruiting local farmers and doing interviews to select someone for a partnership grant for sustainable agriculture research and education. So that is due in April, and we have a handful of good applicants, and we're really psyched to start some new partnerships and offer some new funding to ag producers in our county, hopefully. So the stream work, currently we're operating under a 3-year Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant jointly with Belknap County. Big thanks to Donna. And last year we received a Moose Plate grant, which funded some work in Conway. And then we were also awarded a Moose Plate grant to continue work in Eaton this coming summer. So we have 2.5 miles in the Eatontown Forest and surrounding that we'll be working on Linscott Brook. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, which is disabled for me. So I'm going to need the host to turn that on. And I have a short 10-slide PowerPoint for you. So we'll go through that.
Should be fine now.
All right. All right, you can all see that?
Yep.
Great, thank you. I'm basically on dial up here, so let me know if things are slow on your end. So stream wood additions. This is a fairly new practice. It's only been going on since it was piloted about 10 years ago in Nash Stream State Forest up north. So this primarily takes place on first and second order streams in New Hampshire. And just basically what we're doing is adding trees to the stream. And I'll get into the benefits of why we do that. But why it is the way it is, if you look at these two pictures, these are pretty common first and second order streams that you might see in New England. And what you notice is there's not a lot of wood in the stream channel. And what you do see is a lot of large rocks that are all pretty uniform in size. There's not a lot of fine sediment. There aren't a lot of pebbles. It's just really big rocks because everything else is basically washed away. And what this is basically a result of overforesting, and the wood that would naturally grow and then die and fall into the stream just doesn't exist because we go in and harvest it too soon. And so what we're trying to do is replicate what nature would do if we weren't in there actively taking wood out. So in these pictures, you can tell the forest is pretty young. There's a couple mature trees on the bank, but other than that, it's all pretty young, and it'll be a long time before any of this dies and falls into the stream. So what we're doing is artificially going in and placing it in there. So here's a before and after of the same photo, and it just looks like a tree fell in the stream. It looks kind of messy, and that's what we want it to look like. But if you look on the after photo on the right, there's actually a couple trees in there, and then one large one with a lot of branches capping everything off. And you can see it crosses the entire stream channel, and we try and hit the different elevations within the stream. So it's on the bed and hits mid-course and then goes up to the bank. So what we're trying to get out of this practice are several things. We're trying to improve the water quality, improve aquatic habitat, decrease sediment movement, improve flood resiliency, and increase total biomass in the stream. And really all this is a result of the wood slowing down the water, creating different water features, hydraulics and ripples, and sorting out that sediment and getting the sediment to drop and stay in place instead of washing into our lakes. And what that does is actually makes really good breeding habitat for native brook trout. They like a specific size sediment and stone to create their nests in. And so by creating all these different features within the hydrology, it sorts out the sediment and creates more opportunity for native brook trout to breed. So this is what the actual work looks like. We'll go in with chainsaws and cut trees, and we'll use rigging. This is a grip hoist unit in the middle, and we'll actually pull the trees into the stream and try and lock them in place with a few different strategies. And then on the left, you can see a very robust structure that was built. That's like 5 full-length trees in there, pretty large diameter, about 10 to 12 inch. And those will be there for a very long time. On the far end, they're actually driven into the bank, so they're hopefully locked in. And the whole goal here is for these to stay in place and not be moved and dislodged during high water events. And this photo on the right, I just love because it shows a structure that has been working for several years. This is over in Belknap on the Gunstock property. And below Kelly in the blue shirt is actually one of these structures that is made out of like 3 trees full length from the bank. And you can see on the upstream side that there's a lot of fine material and sand and sediment, and all that has been captured because the water was slowed down by the wooden structure. It allowed that sediment to drop out and the water to continue on. And you can see downstream where there's no treatment, it goes right back to the large boulders. So this is exactly what we're looking for, and everything that Don and Kelly are standing on there would have ended up in the lake. Okay, so what we're doing here in Carroll County is a little different. This work is going on all over New England through different organizations, through NRCS contracts, Trout Unlimited. It's happening everywhere. Ours are funded through these grants, and we primarily partner with Tin Mountain and New Hampshire Fish and Game. And we take an added level of scientific approach to this. So we gather a lot of pre-treatment data, and we will gather post-treatment data so that we can start to learn from this practice and figure out how effective it is. So our stream treatment costs a little bit more than some of the other stream treatments going on because we budget in to do this assessment work to start this database basically. And so that helps fund the research director from Tin Mountain. It funds 2 stream interns through Tin Mountain. And then wetland scientists and really Fish and Game have volunteered a lot of their time. And what they primarily do is they do electrofishing. So they're able to sample all the fish that might be in a particular section of stream. And then the other picture here that you see is doing macroinvertebrate studies. So this is something I participated in this summer. It was fun, but a little strenuous. So we'd go in and they would take samples from all of the different water column levels. This particular one, we were trying to gather any live organisms, macroinvertebrates that were living on the stream bed. And so they were actually scrubbing rocks and trying to catch all the stuff that came off the rocks in that net. And then we'd pour it in the bin and we would sit there for at least 1 hour with little plastic spoons and catch and count any living organism that we could find in there, which they then bottled up, saved, and brought back to the lab to identify under a microscope. And so we're creating baseline data with all this pre-treatment assessment, and that happens through every 100-foot segment of stream. We have a study plot. And then post-treatment volunteers will be able to go back and collect the same data, and hopefully we'll see some positive changes. The big thing that we're trying to do is recruit volunteers to help with that effort. So we will be doing some demo tours and showing people this practice and trying to get people recruited, interested and recruited to come and do some annual monitoring on those. Our board members will definitely help get that started. And so those will be my first tour to do. And then the other thing we want to do is just think if there are any other additional variables that we want to monitor. And that can even be post-treatment if we don't have any baseline data. And the goal here is that we have a more coordinated approach throughout New England. So like I said, this work is going on all over the place, but it's not necessarily being tracked or coordinated in one place. So what our team would like to do is create these best practices and baseline data or baseline methodology and a volunteer monitoring guide, and gather all this data on any stream work that happens and populate it into an online map or an online resource where you can then see everything on one large scale. You can identify what's been treated and hopefully identify new priorities for areas that have not been treated. And these are all our partners. Again, all of this funding comes from the New Hampshire Moose Plate program and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any typed into the chat. I'm wondering if there's any live questions coming in from the audience. I have a quick one that might sound very naive, but when you showed the slide of the very large trees that are going to stay there for a long time, and you said they are actually embedded in the one side of the stream bank, how do they, when you say they're embedded, is it like stuck in there 2 feet, or how far are they before you have to worry about they're going to erode out? And how do you actually dig?
There's several different types of structures that we build, but the whole goal here is that we do the work and lock the trees in place so that they don't move during high water events and get washed out. So in that particular method, we would, with the chainsaw, carve a pencil tip on the end of that log, and then we'd use the rigging system, and the rigging can pull 2,000 pounds and you crank it into the bank. And we shoot for about
Gotcha.
2 to 3 feet. And that way it's anchored right in there. The other thing we do is look for boulders to position things against. We stack trees on top of each other. And, you know, that's the biggest learning curve that people have experienced, is trying to figure out different techniques for getting the wood to stay where it is. Over in
Yeah.
Belknap, you can see they tried just felling the trees into the stream and leaving them attached to the stump. So there's other methods too.
Oh, great explanation. I can picture that. Thanks, Matt. Other questions from attendees in our group? Linda, it looks like you're having a question, but you're mute. There you go. Thank you.
What is the fish population now? Are there many brook trout there, or?
Yeah, so I don't have any stream specific information for you, but where we choose to treat is based on known native populations, and that's really where Fish and Game is key. They know those spots and they help prioritize the areas. One interesting thing I've learned during this process is New Hampshire and most New England states put a lot of time and energy into stocking trout. So those are non-native trout. And the biologist told me, very interestingly, that they've never found a stock trout that survived a winter.
Yeah.
And so really they don't breed, they don't sustain themselves. So that's where this work really does truly benefit the native populations.
That's great. Great work.
That is great work. Very effective slides. Great pictures that you spoke to for that presentation, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you come up with other questions later, I'm sure you can email Matt, give him an old-fashioned phone call, and I'm sure he's happy to share more information with any of us. So thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I'll put my contact in the chat box.
Do it. Thank you. Thank you. So the next part of our program tonight is from the Director of Conservation Programs for the Northeast. This is Sarah Fleming. She's with Ducks Unlimited. She helps with the direct delivery of projects in New England for Ducks Unlimited in her role as the Director of Conservation Programs for them. She's familiar with this topic, having been with Ducks Unlimited for 11 years, and her home base is out of Syracuse, New York. So we're thrilled to have the Zoom room makes that not matter to us. You're as close as the computer buttons hook you into us. So thanks for being our evening featured program tonight. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I guess I'm going to take a little different approach. We're going to move from streams to wetlands. So I am going to share my screen now. Here we go. Everything look good on your end?
It does. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, great. So as we already said, I'm the Director of Conservation Programs for Ducks Unlimited. I cover our Northeast region, which is 12 states. So from the Chesapeake Bay up to Maine, all the way over to New York. I am directly responsible for our conservation program in New England. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about our broader programs, just kind of what Ducks Unlimited does on the ground. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we do close to home in New Hampshire. And then we can open it up for any questions anybody might have. So Ducks Unlimited's mission is to conserve, restore, and manage wetland habitat and the associated habitats for North American waterfowl. But we all know these wetland habitat also benefit a diversity of other wildlife species and provide recreational opportunities for people to go out and enjoy, to fish, to hike, for hunting opportunities, birding, and simply providing clean water, as well as all the other benefits that come along with wetland restoration projects. Now, Ducks Unlimited is a continental organization. Over 800,000 members when we start looking at it from a North American perspective. As our mission indicates, we focus on waterfowl, and as we know, ducks, geese, and swans don't see borders, so in a lot of ways we don't either. We have priority areas where we identify the greatest conservation need across our landscape, focusing on breeding, migration, and wintering habitat. And to date, continentally, we have helped conserve over 14.7 million acres, which is a huge accomplishment, and we're very pleased and very kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit about that goal. But the only way we've been able to do that is through partnerships. Our biggest component of our program is the volunteers that support our mission and help us financially, as well as their blood, sweat, and tears when it comes to helping us with our programs, in addition to our conservation partners like state and federal agencies. So when we start talking about where we work, why we work, it comes down to the best scientific data that's available. We are grounded in science, so we're always learning, we're always applying new adaptive management strategies and techniques to try to make sure we're delivering the best conservation we can. We also work with international conservation planning documents. So again, from a continental scale, we work with landscape level conservation planning, such as the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. We also work very closely with joint ventures and flyaway councils, as well as other landscape level cooperative partnerships like the Fish and Wildlife Service, to help us identify where our priorities are located. And then once we've identified the highest priorities, we start narrowing that down into high priority focus areas, then which take us down to projects. And again, a lot of that comes down to providing waterfowl habitat. And as we know, waterfowl habitat goes hand in hand with wetlands. And looking for areas that have seen wetland loss is one of our highest priority areas where we're focusing to maximize those wetland restoration opportunities. So as I already said, this is kind of my region, our Northeast program. The green dots you see there are the projects that we've delivered on the landscape to date. We've delivered over 200,000 acres in this kind of 12-state region. And you can start to see clusters that show up on that map. And a lot of that has to do with just areas of highest priority for waterfowl, areas that have seen a significant loss of wetland habitat where we've been investing our resources historically. Again, Maryland and Delaware, those are small states, so it kind of shows up as being largely green, but it's relatively spread out across the landscape. But we do have focus areas where we're targeting. So as I already said, what makes the difference is our partnerships. We share our resources, we share challenges, and we share the responsibilities. And really, it's that partnerships that we're able to deliver our conservation programs. And that comes down to offering up various services, financial, as well as other expertise to maximize those wetland resources on the ground. So very briefly, I'm just going to talk about kind of our focus in our Northeast program and where we work. And again, this is very broadly speaking, but we work to enhance existing wetland management areas, so a lot of times WMAs. We also look to develop new managed wetlands. And what we're doing is we're installing water control structures and helping create kind of bermed areas that were historically wetland habitat that may have formerly been drained for agriculture or other practices. And so we're looking to put that wetland footprint back on the ground. And the water control structures allow for land managers to mimic the natural ebb and flow of wetland cycles. So capture rains when it's maybe in a drought period, or allow water to be removed off the wetland when it's really wet. And the importance behind this is wetland cycle. And so we're mimicking the natural process of wetlands to maximize vegetative growth, as well as other invertebrate responses, and maximize different depths of water on the landscape so we can diversify the organisms that will respond to these wetland habitats. So again, it's hard work. We hire local contractors to help us, but just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what that might look like from an enhancement and restoration perspective. We also work a lot in our coastal wetlands. So again, we're looking to enhance these areas. Now, coastal wetlands are a little different in that we're not putting in a lot of times water control structures. What we are doing is trying to restore the natural tidal flow to those systems. So in some cases, we're actually removing barriers or constrictions, culverts and other systems to allow for that kind of natural tidal flow to move into those areas and help to restore the salt marsh and brackish habitat that may have been degraded over time just due to infrastructure or other barriers that may have been created on the landscape. We also manage wetland habitats, which often means working with invasive species control and working in unique systems here in New York. A lot of people hear a lot about Phragmites, but in New York, we focus on narrowleaf cattail, which is our big invasive species that's on the Great Lakes area, which creates these monotypic stands of cattail that reduces habitat quality. And these areas are critically important for spawning northern pike. And so we work with our state partners to go in and try to open these areas up and also control that narrowleaf cattail through herbicide applications and also just by excavating the cattail material out of the wetlands. Again, we try to restore lost freshwater habitat, maybe on agricultural landscapes in areas that maybe have high nutrient sediment loads entering the system. So we'll help with private landowners restore wetlands on their landscape, often through partnerships like the Soil and Water Conservation Districts and NRCS, targeting private land restoration opportunities in agricultural landscapes. And then, of course, we also work to protect critical areas. So Ducks Unlimited is actually an accredited land trust. So we can hold parcels and conservation easements. However, we prefer to work with local land trusts and allow the local entity to hold long-term the projects or the deeded title to the properties. So what we'll do is often help with cost shares or help write grants in order to acquire the lands, and then they'd be transferred over to the local entity for long-term management. This is a site that in Mass that we're really excited about. It's in the town of Plymouth. And again, it was a former cranberry bog that the former landowners worked to restore that natural, you can see that tidal marsh system moving through that landscape. It's actually quite a great story where an ecologically minded landowner restored that site and then donated it or sold it with a bargain sale to the town of Plymouth, and Mass Audubon now manages this site. And then, of course, we work to protect coastal wetlands. So in addition to restoring them, this is just big critical areas like in Maine, for example, we like to try to target eider nesting islands. So we work with the Maine Coastal Heritage Trust to help them target critical areas and a lot of times salt marsh areas for protection that come up on the market. So Ducks Unlimited services, like I said, we offer a diversity of services within our conservation programs, everything from waterfowl and wetland expertise, which is my background. I have a master's degree in wetland and waterfowl management. We also have in-house engineers. So we will do a lot of the work internally when it comes to our wetland designs. So we'll have staff that will go out and survey, draft up engineering designs, and then our professional engineers will stamp those design plans. We will help then with securing permits, and then we will also go out and deliver those projects, but we don't deliver in-house. We don't have heavy operators in-house. What we do is we'll hire local contractors that are experienced in wetland restoration to put those habitat deliverables back on the ground. So it is a nice way to return that money to the local community when we receive large grants. We also have in-house GIS staff, supportive administrative and financial support. And then one of the big proponents of our Ducks Unlimited biologists, you know, we always joke we'd love to be out in the fields helping, but really in a lot of ways we're grant writers. The way we're so successful is we secure large federal grants through our philanthropic donations. We leverage those federal grants to put habitat back on the ground. So I spend a lot of time behind the desk writing grants and trying to secure money and then putting that back out on the landscape. And again, as I already alluded to, we also offer land protection through our both fee acquisition and through conservation easements. So very quickly, I just want to run through some of the services and then I can open it up to questions. But as I said, the backbone of our organization is our bioengineering team. And I really like to joke that the biologists come up with the big ideas, and then the engineers tell us what the reality of being able to deliver that project's actually going to look like. So it works out really well when we have the engineers kind of bringing in that reality perspective. So as I said, a lot of our projects, the primary goal is to restore the natural hydrology, which may mean ditch plugging or breaking tile. The idea is we're trying to restore natural wetlands that existed previously on the landscape that for one reason or another may currently not be functioning as they once did. We like to also focus on restoring upland areas. As we know, these upland areas adjacent to wetlands, the riparian boundaries are critically important to water quality because they help capture sediment and nutrient runoff. They help filter that water that enters into the wetland. But of course, it also provides critical habitat for nesting birds, as well as pollinators, and a lot of other wildlife will utilize those riparian buffers. So biggest component we like to do as well is offer up that opportunity to control water levels. Generally speaking, that allows for managers to maximize habitat restoration opportunities, control invasive species, and ultimately maximize the benefit of the wetland. So that often means putting in large screw gate type structures like you're seeing here on the right, or just small control structures that are put in to allow for just kind of feet level changes. We're not talking huge swings, often just 12 inches or so at a time, to being able to adjust those kind of small increment levels of the water. And then, as of course I said already, we look to acquire areas that are critically important to a lot of our partners, as well as Ducks Unlimited. So areas that come up on the market or have willing sellers that are looking to donate their land to a conservation organization, we can help them with that process. So as I said, everything we do is as a result of partnerships. We work very closely with state agencies, state New Hampshire Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife Service. We actually have biologists that sit in USDA NRCS offices and help with the USDA programs. We work very closely with private landowners, universities, land trusts, and many, many other partners. And again, the backbone of our program is a result of our event system, where we raise a lot of money through donations and philanthropic giving to leverage federal funding. So, you know, wetlands mean water. And so our programs really are about restoring wetland habitat to benefit all users. So wildlife, people, and just maximizing clean water resources, drinking water, helping with tidal fluctuations, reducing floodwater, especially on the East Coast. We all know we see big swings with changing climate. Water, a lot of our coastal areas are threatened. So we're looking for ways to continue to provide opportunity to protect critical coastal resources. But it's also about the people. We can't forget the people. They're a critical component on the landscape, and really, you know, making sure we provide opportunity for people to get outside and enjoy our resources is really important, especially in today's times. As we all know, we're kind of all getting locked up a little bit, being what it is right now. But we've also seen a huge swing in people going outside and enjoying the outdoors, enjoying those public lands. And a lot of the bird watchers are benefiting from our resources that we put on the landscape, and just getting people outdoors to see these great resources that are literally in their backyards is also one of our objectives. And I've already mentioned this again, but I drive this point home. It's just not about the ducks. It's all about all the wetland benefits that come along with our restoration projects. Over 900 different species benefit from our wetland restoration projects. And we're going to continue to make sure we're maximizing that on the landscape as much as possible. So with that, that's a very broad overview of our conservation programs. I'm going to stop sharing for now and just open it up for questions. But in New Hampshire, I just wanted to mention that we have conserved over 6,000 acres throughout New Hampshire, and that's largely been through cost share partnerships with the state, as well as local land trusts. We have one right now in partnership with the Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire, where we're working with them to acquire a large tract of land. They're going to hold it, and they're bringing in the majority of the funding, but we're offering some cost shares on some of the land acquisition costs. So that was a lot of information. So I'm going to open it up and see if anybody has questions.
There is one right off the bat coming in
great.
through the chat, and then we'll get to Steve, who raised his hand in real Zoom life here. Through the chat, we have Jesse Wright, who's the conservationist, right? Jesse asks, is there a minimum land acreage that you require to work with private landowners, Sarah?
No, I really think it comes down to the location, where what's on the landscape. Ideally, we're trying to maximize habitat on the ground, so minimize fragmentation. So we have other projects nearby, but in Maryland, for example, we're doing 5-acre restorations in some locations. I know it seems small, but they're, when you start dealing with smaller landscapes and small agricultural areas, they still have critical benefits. So it really comes down to the site.
Gotcha. Thank you. Steve, you're next. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm with the Carroll County Group, and I'm also chairman of the Tuftonboro Conservation Commission. And we are currently trying to preserve a large wetland complex called the Great Meadow in our town. It's got the name Great Meadow because it was used for late season hay back in the early 1800s. It's we've probably conserved about half of it so far. There's over 500 acres of wetlands, a very active population of beavers that do all the damming we need. When we're out there observing, we see lots of ducks. We're currently number 7 on our list out of 77 is available, and we're a very tight window. Would Ducks Unlimited be able to help us with that?
I'd have to look. Ultimately, as I've already said, we try to recover our projects through grants, and so we'd have to try to find a way to work together. But maybe we could talk offline, and we could. I put my contact information. You can send me the location of the map where it is, and we can figure out how we might be able to look for some opportunities there. What's your timeline when you say you're tight? What does that mean?
We're asking for financial support from our town at our town meeting on May 15th.
Okay.
It will be a much easier sell if we can list groups like yours as being supporters without a number attached.
Oh, definitely. Then that's the problem. If we're talking, I thought we were talking dollars. That makes it a little challenging, but yeah, definitely. If it's a big wetland complex, we will absolutely write letters of support to help with whatever it might be to get town board approval or whatever it might be to help move stuff along. So yes, let's chat more offline, and I could definitely see an opportunity there.
Okay.
Well, these are exactly the kind of connections we hope are made during every one of these Zoom meetings. So that's really rewarding. Dick Lutz.
Yeah, Sarah, it looks like your region is the same as ours. We're the Northeast region, and it starts from West Virginia and includes all the states you have.
Yes.
We have a regional conference in Portsmouth it's planned for August, the end of August. Would that be something you, one of your Ducks Unlimited people would like to attend and see some of the projects in New Hampshire that are going on?
Absolutely. Yeah. Send me the link to the information on it. And now it would be for presentations or just kind of outreach opportunities, connections, that kind of thing.
All the above.
I love it. Let's talk. Yeah, definitely. Send me the link and I will check it out. And I'm always looking for opportunities, and I'd love to get over to New Hampshire, and I have a couple trips planned over to Maine too. So it'll be right on the way.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Any other questions while we have Sarah here live on Zoom? Her contact information with her email address through theducks.org and her phone number are right in the chat right now. So if you want to jot those down, we'll keep you busy, Sarah. Thank you for this program. This was a great presentation tonight.
Yes, well, thank you. And I appreciate the invitation. And this is exactly, sounds like your objectives were as well, is to try to make these connections, because as we already indicated, I'm over in Syracuse, New York, so I'm not on the ground. And so I need partners to help me out, to tell me what's important locally that I may not be seeing regularly because I'm not out there. So this is exactly where I'd hope this go tonight. So thank you. I appreciate everybody's time.
Heartwarming. Perfect. Thank you. All right, our next part of this program tonight is with a powerful troika who are here to give us information about the conference they've attended. So we have Andy Pressman. I'm not sure if Andy is the iPhone Zoom in person, but Andy, was one of the attendees. He's our NHACD alternate representative to the National Association of Conservation Districts. He's from Cheshire County Conservation District. We have Dorn Cox, who's our NHAC representative to the National Association of Conservation Districts from Stratford County Conservation District. And we have with us also Linda Brownson. She's a member of NHACD Executive Board as the Northeast representative, which is from Maine to West Virginia. She's on the Grafton County Conservation District and is past president of NHACD and a past chair of the New Hampshire State Conservation Committee. So welcome to the three of you. And I'll let the three of you, I'm not sure if that is Andy on the iPhone, but I do know that Linda and Dorn are with us right here in Zoom person. So we'll let the two of you figure out how you're going to start sharing your information with us. And after you tell us your information from the conference, we'll open it up and hope that other people who are with us tonight are sharing their information and what they can bring back from the conference as well. So there you go. Thank you, Linda and Dorn, for being here with us.
Well, I thought I would start with kind of an overview of the meeting and just some general news items for NACD in general going forward. And then Dorn will talk about the carbon resolutions that the executive board pushed forward and got approved at the meeting by the NACD board. And I don't know what Andy will talk about. I think just his experience as a first timer to the annual meeting, probably. Okay, well, I'll start out. This was the 20th 2021 NACD annual meeting that was held virtually for the first time on February 1st to the 10th. And celebrated the NACD's 75th anniversary, a diamond out of the dust, talking about the Dust Bowl. How many of you, I would like to ask, attended part of that meeting? Don did, and that's all. Okay, well, then I'll give you a little recap. So it was a learning experience for all of us because it's a big meeting, but we NACD who all worked together to produce a successful meeting using what you could call a holistic meeting platform. It was called Bizzabo. We should look into that for our regional NHACD regional meeting. The first week consisted of board and committee meetings, which were not that different from how we have been conducting those meetings for the past year, except that there were more people in the meetings, mainly visitors from other meetings and partner colleagues who wanted to sit in, which was great. And the second week included the general session with speakers such as the new acting NRCS chief, Terry Cosby, the former acting NRCS chief, Kevin Norton, the Northeast Regional Conservationist, Terrell Erickson, NASCA president, Vern Cox, and we had a special guest with whose organization we just signed an MOU, and that was Dr. Antonio Farrell, president of Manners, which is the Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Scientists, among other speakers. There were several excellent breakout sessions, sometimes making it difficult to choose among those scheduled at the same time. Normally, our annual meetings are attended by between 900 and 1,200 people, representing over 3,000 conservation districts across the country. This year, we had 1,856 registrants. Many probably who find it difficult to travel and leave home for a week during the annual meeting in person and found it convenient to attend online, not to mention less expensive. It was only $50, where usually they're more like $400 or $500, depending on how many things you want to options you want to participate in. Our executive board reviewed the meeting last week with a recap and concluded that under the circumstances, the meeting turned out very well. Nothing can replace the energy, the vibrancy, and the networking of the in-person meeting, that's for sure. But we were able to reach more folks who might decide next year in 2022 to attend in person, which will take place, by the way, in Orlando, Florida on February 12th to the 16th. On February 10th, NACD administered the oaths of office for our incoming leadership members. Our new president was sworn in. He is Michael Crowder of Washington State. Michael manages a ranch in Washington and is a partner of his family's third generation farming operation in Indiana. He serves on his local Benton Conservation District Board and was formerly the Washington delegate on the NACD board. And I just wanted to mention to Sarah, but she's probably already gone, right? Okay. They had an auction item. I have to say this. We raised $86,000 with an auction. And there was one item I really wanted to but I was outbid, so I'm not going to get to go. Also, as vice president, now we have New England's own Kim LaFleur of Plimpton, Massachusetts, and she does a great job. She's kind of made her way up the ranks of the officers. And Ian Cunningham of Pipestone, Minnesota was elected as second vice president. And executive board member Gary Blair of Starkville, Mississippi was elected to serve as NACD secretary, treasurer. Tim Palmer, the past president, will remain on the officer team as past president. We also swore in 4 new members of the NACD executive board from the North Central region, the Northern Plains region, the Southeast region, and the South Central region. And I was reelected for another term to represent the Northeast region. So you're stuck with me for another couple years. Other news from NACD, we did announce the transition to a virtual 2021 Envirothon annual competition due to the ongoing pandemic. Nebraska will still host the competition to be held over several days beginning Monday, July 26th. The main focal points will be Nebraska's ecology, natural resources, and the current environmental topic for Envirothon this year, which is water resources management, local control, and local solutions. We are still committed to ensuring a quality event, which may look different, but we'll have the same spirit of challenging these students to become hopefully the next generation of conservation leaders. And only 3 weeks away, NACD will put on a virtual advocacy week, formerly called the Washington Fly-In, which we always participate in, and Dorn comes as well. Rick Elsmore and I have gone together for several years to meet with congressional delegates and have built up relationships with key staff members, which came to a halt last March at the same time as Rick's retirement. So this year, NACD's government affairs team will be hosting a Zoom briefing for members and partners participating in the virtual advocacy week. The briefing will be a substitute for the breakfast briefing that we normally host in Washington, D.C., where we review all the issue papers. I'm currently trying to schedule Zoom meetings or conference calls that week with our delegates. But so far, I have not had success yet, but it might wind up to be conference calls. However, it does take a while. I'm still optimistic I'll hear from some of them. Yesterday, I had a Zoom meeting with Becky Ross, our new state conservationist, who offered to join us in these Zoom meetings if they happen. And she's going to gather up materials to send along with our issue papers and our appropriation requests that we make every year for conservation technical assistance, state and private forestry, and other of our concerns. As to an update on the pandemic status regarding our DC office, NACD continues temporary telecommuting arrangements for the Washington DC office. We have now 25 staff members, so they're all telecommuting, and all non-essential business travel remains canceled at least through May 31st for all NACD staff. However, NACD is planning our annual summer meeting in Chicago this year on July 22nd to 27th. We'll see how it goes. We don't know, but we have 3 more weeks before we have to tell the hotel yes or no. It will be, but we're feeling with all the vaccinations going on that maybe by the end of July, we should get some people to attend. We'll see. It will be on the Miracle Mile right downtown. And it will be aligned with celebrating our 75th anniversary. It'll be right where NACD actually began, which was at a Chicago hotel where conservation district officials from 17 states met to organize the National Association. The group discussed soil erosion control and its importance to the nation, the duties and responsibilities of soil conservation district officials, and the need for a national organization to speak for them. And here we are today, though we have other natural resource concerns besides soil erosion, the idea is the same. One other item I wanted to mention is the next NACD Urban and Community Conservation Webinar. It's scheduled for noon to 1 o'clock on March 18th, and will feature the work of 2 conservation districts and how they support community green space. These webinars are free. I don't know if any of you have been on them, but they're great. And registration is limited. So if you're interested, you can go to the NACD website /webinars, and you can register and also look at what future webinars are going to be for NACD coming up. We have a grant to cover all of those. So there's a lot of work that goes into them, and they're very valuable to learn from other conservation districts across the country. So Doran, I'll turn it over to you with just the prelude that during this NACD meeting, we had the executive board push forth these resolutions on carbon, which is very unusual that the executive board does that. Usually they come from the districts or the region or the states, but we felt it was really important that the districts become aware of this because it's happening. So Doran,
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Linda. And I was also going to make the comment about how unusual it was for these to be pushed forward by the executive board. So what I'd like to do is first do a high-level summary of the 5 resolutions that were pushed forward. There was a lot of other observations, from my perspective in terms of things that happened during the event, but I think this is really significant. And the point that I want to sort of impress upon this group is that I think, and this is my opinion, that that the pace of change and things that are moving are one of the largest potential movements that are going to affect the direction of conservation districts that we've had, I would say, since the founding of the districts. There's a huge amount coming at us, and we're very well positioned in terms of our underlying mission and structure to help deliver some key services. So I'll say that up front, and then I'll try to provide some context and background for why I think that's the case. So I'll read just the one background for the first resolution, and then I'll just read the resolutions, and they build on one another, and hopefully you can see that pattern. And so the first resolution is essentially reads, the background is that there's significant interest building to address atmospheric carbon reductions through a variety of public and private sector programs and initiatives. Focus continues to grow on public sector involvement, and conservation districts must be engaged in negotiations to ensure that carbon solutions are created that will appropriately recognize credit contributions from the nation's private working lands. As the legislative and administrative protocols are considered regarding carbon sequestration, it's imperative that NACD actively and fully participates to advocate on behalf of conservation districts. I'll mention that part of the urgency here, and I think why the executive board moved quickly on this, is because some of this is happening very quickly after years and years and years of building up in terms of working from soil health initiatives and other initiatives that, around carbon, and bringing the idea of natural climate solutions and working landscapes as part of the climate solution has really, again, just picked up speed as a win-win situation. We've have all the major ag groups and commodity groups now getting on board with this as an approach. So the proposed policy was NACD supports adoption of a performance-based tax credit to promote conservation practice, adoption, and carbon sequestration. So that's the first one. I'll skip to the second one. NACD also supports the adoption of performance-based credit to promote, oh, I just did that. Okay. And the second one is supports the concept of stacking conservation credits. This would include, but not limited to, soil health, no-till, reduced-till, carbon sequestration, water quality, water quantity, greenhouse gas reduction credits, and others. So this is the idea that a payment, you can get more than one payment for that, the function that carbon delivers in the soil. And NACD supports the concept of a carbon bank to promote conservation practice adoption and carbon sequestration. And finally, NACD supports the utilization of conservation districts as and this is very important, as a neutral third-party verifier of conservation practice adoption and carbon sequestration. So this is both practices and outcomes where districts are in a unique position as a trusted third-party local entity to provide a lot of what these markets are looking for. And so you'll all, and I'm going to go through the context of what some of these different markets are, and then look at what's, again, where the districts come in. But in general, we have not just government marketplaces, as were mentioned in the resolutions, in terms of carbon banks or environmental incentive programs, but we also have private market initiatives. Just in the last year, we now have an environmental service market consortium with some of the largest food companies participating. There's a Nori marketplace, a regen network, Cargill and Rodale. Can you believe that? Cargill and Rodale teamed up for a marketplace. Farmer Business Network, which is partnered with Nature Conservancy and represented on the board, with a new initiative for marketplace with Gradable. Microsoft, Truterra are teaming up. Indigo Ag, a Boston-based startup around biological ag systems, likewise a marketplace. SIBO, which is backed partly by Gore, Vice President Gore's investments, also announcing a marketplace. Hudson Carbon, corporate food companies such as General Mills, Stonyfield, Organic Valley, Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Unilever, all making major science-based commitments around soil-based carbon capture as part of their portfolio. And their new insurance products that are coming out based on improved soil health They're nonprofits, very large nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy, as I mentioned, World Wildlife Fund, and others really focusing on this. Then there are hybrid models like the Regen One network out of California that's linked up with Whole Foods, Google, and others. Also about quantifying soil carbon, looking at conservation districts to help provide both the practices and the planning and the measurement on the ground, and using the USDA structures and questions and templates from that are already in practice as the foundation for that. The largest tech companies like Google and Microsoft all are working at how do they fit into regenerative ag movement. There are other specific initiatives like the Zero Food Print project out of California, but also Colorado, and perhaps soon to be here in the Northeast piloting, where it's a voluntary local funding pool that's created by an opt-in on restaurant checks and food service delivery companies and so forth, so that those funds can be delivered to local conservation projects that will be capturing soil carbon. Just to give a sense, one county in California, if the major restaurants were to participate at only 1% on restaurant bills, would be about, I think the number in Marin County was 18 million a year for a local conservation fund for practices. So that's a lot larger than a lot of the county conservation district budgets. So that's again, but in order to get those on the ground, there needs to be technical service and assistance and planning and documentation and so forth. On the federal level, likewise, as I mentioned, the carbon bank concept that's still being defined. It's early stages, but it's on the 100-day agenda for the USDA to be reviewing, and how that can fit within even existing funding allocations. There's the ongoing National Soil Health Infield Conservation Innovation Grant Program, developing a national soil health dynamic properties report and national dynamic soils database. But it's not just USDA. There's Department of Interior. It's really across agencies. The Department of Energy just announced their ARPA-E, which is Advanced Research Projects for Energy challenges. We have they awarded tens of millions of dollars around innovation, around measuring in-field greenhouse gas emissions, not just carbon, but other emissions like nitrous oxide and methane. We had a number of awardees right there at UNH that are out of the UNH related companies that are working on those awards. They're announcing more than $100 million in awards along those lines, with a vision that producers will receive more income from the services of their land than they do from the agricultural products. That's their vision from ARPA-E's perspective. Also, the executive order creating a civilian climate corps, or to release within the next 90, or within, now it's more like 60 days, a recommendation for the creation of a civilian conservation corps to help document and implement these kinds of practices. So again, where are they going to get the training and local mentorship and affiliations? I think a climate corps is going to be tightly linked to our conservation districts that are in all 50 states and tied in with USDA. There's other work to enable that around ag data privacy and data use with USDA as we're collecting more. All of these products, every one of these entities that are trying to implement a market, trying to implement incentive, trying to make a claim, all of it has to be based on what actually happens at the producer level. If you think through what this means, if we look back to, again, the initial Conservation Corps, or we look at the initial Conservation Service and the mission there, and then we look at where we are now, you can see it's a similar scale, and that in order to translate some of these large scale efforts into local conservation and actually take action, there needs to be that local presence that's trusted, that's working directly with our agricultural communities at that level to make all this work. And so that's why, as I mentioned, I think these 5 resolutions were so important. They passed unanimously and were well supported. But I think this is a big shift again as we look forward in terms of positioning the work we do and potentially, having access to a whole different set of resources to draw upon and have a different set of questions in terms of how do we as districts and actually respond and provide the kinds of services that are going to be asked of us. And so a time right now, I think, where we can think about what does that look like? What does that look like for our local districts? What does it look like as we bring in new technologies and new staff and technical support to help build that bridge between where we are now and some of what is being asked of us for conservation and what's being asked of us in terms of agriculture in general. So thank you for giving me time to sort of debrief on that with all of you. It's certainly a busy time after years of talking about soil health and trying to get and build interest. I feel like the interest is there now. It's really a very different set of questions that we're facing. So thank you.
That was a comprehensive overview. Thank you, Dorn.
My pleasure.
We did have, there's a good question in chat. Where do we find the grants to pay for the training? That's a good question. We should hold on to that for just a moment. I do see Richard Miller's hand is up for a question. And we did have in the chat that Jesse and Jackie had also attended some sessions and might have a little bit of input too. So Jesse, if you wanted to go first, we could go from you to Richard. And Richard Miller, and then we could answer Dick's question about, I don't know if it's hypothetical or if it's a real question. Where's the grant money going to come from? Dorn, do you have insights from that? Think about that while we're hearing.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, each of these programs I mentioned are being funded, and the scale of funding is far greater than what we've historically been looking at for conservation. So yeah, that's part of this, and part of the new administration is shifting around some of the existing resources that will come this way. So that's and just to give a sense in the global climate accounting world, I feel silly sometimes talking about the sort of the scale of money that's starting to flow into this from capital markets and so forth. Like there's a mid-sized sovereign wealth fund going into investing in soil carbon, and it's like $40 billion. So this is a whole different, and I'll believe it when it actually happens. But I've been in the meetings where I'm not making those numbers up. So it's, what does it look like for our districts is again my question. Again, we won't know until it actually starts to hit us, but it is there.
Starts with being talked about. So that's okay.
That's right.
That's okay. Jesse, you entered in to the chat earlier. I don't know if it was you or Jackie that entered in and said that you had also attended. Do you have anything you want to share with us? And then we'll go to Richard Miller.
Sure. I mean, I attended some great sessions. I think in the interest of time, I'll let other folks go right ahead and talk about what they experienced, both Dorn and others offered stuff that I would also offer. So I'll let other folks talk, and then I'll chime in if I have anything useful.
That was kind and conscientious, and I appreciate your sentiment, and I'm sure whatever you would say would be useful, but thank you for being conscientious about leaning in and having Richard Miller share something with us. You had your hand up earlier. Is it still valid?
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Dorn, I was interested in your third party input from the districts in terms of carbon sequestration and so forth. And I wondered what would be the financial um, implications of that, I guess. Are we going to be, well, I'll just leave it to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been advocating for essentially planning as being one of the core criteria, and that planning function be a sustained funding pool that sort of that's available, so that the technical service role that the districts would play would be funded as a part of some of these carbon banks or funds. And I think the Civilian Climate Corps likewise is funding positions to be doing that, potentially doing that on the ground data collection and soil health planning processes where we have NRCS practices around soil health that have not been widely implemented, around cover crop implementation and cover crop choice and planning and grazing management plans. All that is sort of encompassed within achieving some of these results. So it would come in the form, I believe, of more money for staffing in support of producers.
Comprehensive.
I guess I still wonder how the funding would channel back to the districts that are providing some of the manpower to monitor this.
Yeah, I think it would be payments for services, essentially, which either directly for staffing, as I said, and keeping those staff positions, and also just for as we are contracting with NRCS for providing technical assistance and writing plans and support, it'd be along those lines.
Do you have some input about that, Linda?
Well, I was just going to say that we don't do a lot of services for pay, but most conservation districts do. So this might be a place where we could go in it in a bigger way, because in the Biden administration, especially, this is going to get bigger really fast, because policymakers are working, hard to take measures to address climate change in alignment with his program. And a lot of conservation districts make a whole lot of money doing services. Some of them are just approving water management measures, and I don't know what else. I know New Jersey makes like almost $1 million a year doing fee for services.
Yeah.
So maybe this is our entry point.
Yeah, if you can imagine, a comprehensive nutrient management plan and the payment schedule for that, it's a similar scale to that payment and the technical service sort of fees that go with that, which is, I think, what we're looking at. And what that involves is going out and doing samples and then writing a plan and then tracking its implementation.
Right. I remember seeing, Dorn, that tool that was used at Wolf's, what's the name of your place?
At Wolf's Neck, yep.
Yeah, they were using a tool to measure in the soil the carbon.
Yeah, so they're tools that are now, this is where some
Yeah.
of the Department of Energy challenges are developing and commercializing very rapid soil carbon measurements. So the one that they're funding with the Soil Health Institute leadership is called Yardstick. That wasn't the one you saw. The one you saw, Linda, was called Quick Carbon. So, but it's a handheld spectrometer that very quickly takes a reading on the color of the soil and then references that color to the soil type and the historic, what we know about that soil. And so they can give you a good reading in terms of how much soil carbon is in that sample at different depths. The Yardstick has the spectrometer built right into the drill bit. You just drill it right in. So rather than waiting for a lab test, you can get hundreds or thousands of samples in a day with almost instant readings. So this is the sort of, but even if you have a robot doing that, there's still people that need to go into the field to put that to
Right.
set that up. and to make sense of it and to make it into something that's useful for farmers to implement and to feedback, because this isn't just about the markets. This is actually also about making better conservation choices and creating and that takes relationships.
Dorn, as you suggested, on the ground people will be necessary. I think Justin and Bill and whoever we might hire this coming year might be the person to actually do the in-field examination. That would be a benefit to the NHACD provision to the member districts. And I'm thinking that we might want to quantify the financial benefits. And that's where I'm wondering how we're going to quantify that effort and monetize it actually to our NHACD benefit.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting question where those flow, whether they flow through in terms of large block grants that come through the state, whether they come through NACD down to the districts. I think a lot of these programs, it's a little too early to say exactly the mechanism, other than at some point there's going to have to be an on the ground entity. And I think that it's hard. It would be bizarre to create something so much like the districts and not do that through the districts. So that's.
Yeah, I guess my question here is now, how do we, I guess we need a think tank to come up with how do we get the districts to get involved with this? How do we train them? And how do we get it off the ground? It sounds like not all the pieces are there yet to do this, but we need to be doing a lot of what ifs, so as soon as it happens, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right, Dick. Is that again? It's moving faster than we're able to. That we don't have all of those questions answered because, of the urgency at the top level. It's going to take a while to build in the capacity locally to actually implement this effectively. But thinking about that and saying what we need is going to be important.
So
Hearing this all so far, Jesse, did you have anything that you wanted to add about attending?
I think you meant Jackie, but no, I don't.
Oh, there we go. Well, I was staring at the Jesse right screen, but yeah, I did meant
Okay.
Jackie. Good. Okay. As long as you're listening and feeling comfortable to tell us your take on the conferences.
No, it
And-
kind of went into a better conversation with Dorn and Richard, so I didn't want to interrupt. But I attended and it was good, but I don't really have, a whole lot to add. So
That's okay. The more people that are there, it raises everybody's baseline, it raises the group baseline of knowledge and understanding. So
Yeah.
that's not to be discounted. And Richard Miller, in the chat, you have your hand raised, but on your screen, I don't see your hand raised. Was that an old hand raised or do you have something else to add now?
I can't account for my hand raise. I'm not intending to.
Okay, good. So that must have been an old one from before. All right.
my question next is, who is going to be our guardian angels to look at what's coming down the pike and be our, I guess you call them forward observers.
Right.
When do we pull which triggers? So is there a group of people in New Hampshire that's capable of doing that? Or do we sit here aggressively waiting for the phone to ring?
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
I think that this is a discussion that needs to, tie in statewide. I think that conservation districts are a big piece of it, but through the State Conservation Committee, I think we can broaden the dialogue, but I think we need to bring this up front as an issue that we start talking about and seeing how it plays with among the state agencies, federal agencies, and delivery mechanisms. working with the universities. I mean, there's a lot of folks involved, and the State Conservation Committee is one of those places where all those folks are already coming together as it,
Yeah.
you know, so
I
that
agree.
may be one of the vehicles to, you know, but I think from the strategic sense for the conservation districts, I think we need to have, you know, Dorn, have you share, if you can put some of these, you know, put together the information about these resolutions. You know, I sat in on the second week, so I wasn't aware of, you know, I didn't attend, you know, the sessions on related to carbon. So it'd be great to be able to have some of the summary information and start a dialogue going.
And I think that sounds exactly right. And I would point out, Linda, that I think NACD is going to be so important for helping the districts navigate this and being that voice in Washington that's talking at the agency level and with legislative staff and the rest, because this is, again, because if there was a time when NACD was important, I think this is going to be this is it, because like you said, Dick, we're looking for guidance. And how do we adapt this locally? And I think that really highlights the role that NACD plays here, is helping us bring that all together.
I'm looking
That is their plan, and they're taking it very seriously. So we'll
I'm
be hearing
looking at-
more.
I'm looking at, instead of the fly-in, getting people to go to the congressional offices in New Hampshire. If we can't do it that week of that advocacy, we can do it the week before, the week after, or sometime around it, and talking to the congressional staff in the state offices. That'll get the point across just as well as being in Washington. And we might be able to get more people to do that. And politicians are very good at counting noses.
If those
I would
offices
second
are
that.
open now, I don't know if they're open. The ones in Washington are not open. I don't know if they're open here, actually.
We do have local access, and I would encourage that's an excellent proposition.
Mhm. Yep, certainly is.
Even if we have to meet them in a parking lot or the woods,
Right,
we don't have to meet in the office. We'll
Right.
meet in New Hampshire someplace.
yep. Good idea.
Well, I would say this was an incredibly productive Zoom session, with having Steve connect with Ducks Unlimited and a conversation, an after party, as it were, with Dick Lutz asking about Ducks Unlimited being available for a possible presentation or some part of the
Right.
late summer event is huge. Learning about everything that you, Linda, and Dorn shared, and great questions that came out of this. So it's all good, and it's almost overwhelming at the same time. So
Agreed.
thank you, Matt, for sharing, for kicking it off and sharing with such vibrancy about your work in Carroll County too.
Huge fan of that work. Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, beautiful job. Anything else for the greater good? Otherwise, it sounds like it's time to think globally but act locally. And at 8:24, oh, Dick Miller, is that goodbye, or is that I have more to say?
That was a goodbye, and thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah.
everybody.
Great evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll adjourn.
Oh, sure. It's nice to see you all.
Nice moderating, Chris.
Oh, thank you.